The conference room door wasn't fully closed. When Derek said, "My father-in-law is a complete loser. The only way he's useful is through his connections. Once I become vice president, I'll get rid of the old fool." My hand froze on the coffee cup. Melanie's laughter cut through the air like broken glass. I didn't say anything, but something inside me shifted into calculating mode. The next morning, I scheduled a comprehensive qualification review for all employees in my division. But let me take you back to that Tuesday afternoon, just 20 minutes before everything changed forever. The Austin headquarters buzzed with its usual energy. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lady Bird Lake, and the late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across our modern workspace. I just finished reviewing quarterly reports when I decided to grab some coffee from the break room near the executive conference area. Derek and Melanie had mentioned they'd be discussing their upcoming projects there. As I walked down the hallway, I felt that familiar warmth of pride. 8 years ago, Derek had been a struggling junior programmer making $32,000 at a startup that folded within 6 months. Melanie, my daughter, had been working as an administrative assistant for $41,000, far below her potential. Now look at them, Derek pulling in $95,000 as a senior developer, Melanie earning $78,000 as a project manager. They'd built a beautiful home in Cedar Park, drove matching BMWs, and talked about starting a family soon. "Dad, you've been so incredible to us," Melanie had said just last week over Sunday dinner. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you for everything you've done." Derek had nodded enthusiastically, raising his wine glass. "To the best father-in-law a guy could ask for. Your guidance has changed our entire lives." I'd used every connection I had. Called in favors with executives at 6 different companies. Recommended Derek for positions he wasn't quite qualified for. Then coached him through the interviews. When Melanie needed that project management certification, I paid the $4,700 fee without hesitation. When they wanted to buy their house but were short on the down payment, I quietly transferred $15,000 to their account. "Just until you get settled," I told them, though we all knew it was a gift. The coffee machine hummed as I filled my ceramic mug, the one Melanie had given me for Father's Day with "World's Best Dad" printed in bold letters. Through the thin walls, I could hear voices from the conference room. Derek's laugh, distinctive and loud. Melanie's softer tones mixing with those of their colleagues. I walked toward the conference room, intending to peek in and wave hello. The door stood slightly ajar, maybe 3 inches. Just enough. That's when the world tilted sideways. "My father-in-law is a complete loser," Derek's voice carried clearly through the gap. I recognized that tone, the same one he used when he thought he was being clever at dinner parties. "The only way he's useful is through his connections. Once I become vice president, I'll get rid of the old fool. He doesn't even understand modern technology." My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. The ceramic handle felt suddenly slippery in my grip. Melanie's laughter rang out, bright and cruel. Not the gentle laugh I'd heard 1,000 times during our Sunday dinners. This was different, sharp, mocking, predatory. "Dad always thinks he's so smart, but really we're just using him. Remember when he tried to explain cloud computing to you last month? I thought you were going to die trying not to laugh." The hallway wavered slightly in my peripheral vision. My chest felt tight, as if someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribcage. "The guy peaked 20 years ago," Derek continued, his voice gaining confidence as he warmed to his theme. "Now he's just dead weight with a Rolodex. But hey, dead weight with a Rolodex beats dead weight without one, right? Once I'm VP and don't need his recommendations anymore, I'll make sure he gets pushed into early retirement. Maybe some nice severance package to keep him quiet about all the nepotism." Someone else laughed. I recognized Maria from accounting. "You guys are terrible," she said, but her tone was amused, not disapproving. "Honestly, it's embarrassing sometimes," Melanie said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried perfectly through the door gap. "I look at him and wonder how someone so pathetic raised me. Thank God I got Mom's brains instead of his delusions of relevance." The coffee cup in my hand began to tremble. Not from emotion, that would come later, This was purely physical, my nervous system responding to betrayal the way it might respond to falling from a great height. What really kills me, Derek said, is how he thinks we actually respect his opinion. Last week, he spent 45 minutes explaining why we should diversify our investment portfolio. I'm thinking, dude, you're the one who's been giving us money for years because you can't figure out we're playing you. The investment advice was hilarious, Melanie agreed. He has these Excel spreadsheets tracking our financial progress. If he only knew we spent his Christmas bonus on the boat instead of investing it like we promised. More laughter. My legs felt unsteady, as if the floor had developed a subtle tilt. God, and the way he gets all emotional about Mom, Derek continued. Every time he mentions Susan, you can see him getting teary-eyed. It's like he's still trying to win her approval from beyond the grave by taking care of us. Pathetic doesn't even begin to cover it. At least the emotional manipulation works in our favor, Melanie said coldly. Every time I wear Mom's ring, he gets this look on his face like he's about to cry with gratitude. Makes it so easy to ask for money. My grandmother's ring. Susan's ring. The ring I'd given Melanie as a sacred trust, as a connection between generations of women in our family. She wore it as a prop in their long con game. The best part is how proud he gets when he introduces us to his colleagues, Derek said. You can see him puffing up with pride, like we're his greatest accomplishments. If he only knew we spend half our time making fun of him to these same people. Remember the Christmas party? Maria asked. When he was telling everyone about Derek's promotion, and Derek was making faces behind his back? That was gold, Melanie laughed. Dad spent 20 minutes bragging about how Derek was going to be the youngest vice president in company history. Meanwhile, Derek standing behind him doing that jerking-off motion with his hand. The steel bands around my chest tightened another notch. I could taste copper in my mouth, the metallic flavor of shock and betrayal. The jerking-off motion was maybe a bit much, Derek said. But come on, the guy was practically nominating me for sainthood. Someone had to deflate that ego balloon. What I don't understand is how he hasn't figured it out yet, someone else said. I thought it might be Jennifer from marketing. I mean, you've been pretty obvious about using him. That's the beauty of it, Melanie replied. He wants so badly to believe we love and respect him that he ignores all the evidence to the contrary. Classic cognitive dissonance. People see what they want to see, especially lonely old men who lost their wives. Lonely old men who lost their wives. Susan had been gone 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. I counted every one of them. Besides, Derek added, he's so desperate to feel needed that he practically begs us to let him help. Makes the manipulation incredibly easy. True, Melanie said. And the guilt factor is huge. He feels bad about Mom dying, so he overcompensates by throwing money at us. It's basic psychology. My vision had narrowed to a tunnel. The conference room door, slightly ajar, seemed impossibly far away and impossibly close at the same time. How much do you think you've gotten out of him over the years? Maria asked. Let me think, Derek said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. There was the house down payment, 15 grand. The car payments when I was between jobs, call it 5,000. The certification program for Melanie was almost 7,000 with all the extras. Christmas bonuses, random cash transfers. Probably close to 80,000 total. Don't forget the mortgage co-signing, Melanie added. That's worth way more than the cash. Without his credit score, we'd be renting some shitty apartment in Round Rock. Oh, and the Italy trip, Derek said. That was what, 11,000? Also, we could honor Susan's memory. He said it in a mocking sing-song voice that made my stomach lurch. The Italy trip was genius, Melanie said. I still can't believe he bought that story about wanting to visit the places Mom dreamed of seeing. We spent the whole week making fun of his tourist outfit and broken Italian. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. My coffee had grown cold in my hands, though I couldn't remember how long I'd been standing there. The voices continued, but they sounded underwater now, distorted and strange. I turned and walked back to my office, each step measured and deliberate. My assistant looked up as I passed her desk. "Everything all right, Mr. Peterson? You look pale." "Fine," I managed. "Just need to review some files." I closed my office door and sat behind my mahogany desk. The same desk where I'd written recommendation letters for Derek. The same desk where I'd coached Melanie through difficult presentations. The same desk where, just 3 months ago, I'd drafted a succession plan that would have positioned Derek for that vice president role he was so confident about. The view from my corner office showed downtown Austin spreading toward the hills. I'd worked 26 years to earn this view, this position, this respect. Started as an entry-level recruiter making $28,000. Worked nights and weekends. Earned my MBA while supporting Susan through her battle with cancer. Built relationships across the tech industry when Austin was still trying to become Silicon Hills. I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Derek and Melanie at their wedding 3 years ago. Beaming with joy. My arm around Derek's shoulders as if he were the son I'd never had. Susan had been gone 2 years by then, but she would have loved seeing Melanie so happy. "Take care of our girl," Susan had whispered during her final weeks. "And find yourself someone who makes you feel whole again." I'd been too busy taking care of Derek and Melanie to even think about dating. Too focused on building their futures to consider my own loneliness. The memories came flooding back now, each one a sharp blade. When Derek got laid off 18 months ago, I'd worked the phones for 3 days straight. Called everyone I knew at Apple, Google, Facebook, even smaller firms. Found him the position at TechFlow that paid $20,000 more than his previous job. He'd actually cried when I told him, "I'll never forget this, George. Never." I remembered that conversation clearly now. Derek had been sitting in my living room, head in his hands. "I don't know what we're going to do," he'd said. "The mortgage alone is $3,400 a month. Melanie's salary can't cover everything." "Don't worry," I told him, placing my hand on his shoulder. "I've got friends in the industry. We'll find you something better." And I had 3 sleepless nights of calling contacts, explaining Derek's situation, vouching for his character. When Jim Morrison at TechFlow agreed to interview him, I'd coach Derek for hours. "Remember, they're looking for leadership potential," I'd advised. "Talk about the Morrison account at your last job. You were on that team, so you understand the technical challenges." "But George, I was just a junior developer on that project. I barely knew what was happening." "You observed the leadership decisions. You can speak to the process. Confidence, Derek. That's what they want to see." The interview had gone perfectly. $95,000 salary, full benefits, stock options. Derek had called me from his car afterward, sobbing with gratitude. When Melanie wanted to move from administrative work into project management, I enrolled her in a 6-month certification program, $4,700. Then I convinced my friend Patricia at DataVault to create a position specifically for her. "She's brilliant," I told Patricia. "Just needs the right opportunity." Patricia hired her as a favor to me, trusting my judgment. But it went deeper than that. The certification program had been intensive evenings and weekends for 6 months. Melanie had struggled with the coursework, calling me in tears multiple nights. "Dad, I don't understand the budget analysis section. Everyone else seems to get it, but I'm completely lost." I'd spent my weekends tutoring her, buying additional textbooks, even hiring a private instructor for $200 per session. 12 sessions total, $2,400 on top of the program fee. "You're so patient with me," she'd said after passing her final exam. "I could never have done this without you. You believe in me more than I believe in myself." The house they lived in, I'd co-signed the mortgage when their credit wasn't quite strong enough. Put my own financial reputation on the line. The BMW payments they sometimes struggled with, I'd quietly transferred money when they fell behind. Never mentioned it, never made them feel small about it. The house purchase had been a nightmare. Their debt-to-income ratio was too high, their credit scores marginal. 3 different lenders had rejected their application. "George, I hate to ask this," Derek had said, "but would you consider co-signing? We found this perfect place in Cedar Park. For bedrooms, 2.5 baths, great school district for when we have kids. But they need a cosigner with better credit. I'd reviewed their finances carefully that night. $543,000 purchase price. They could afford maybe $400,000 comfortably, but they'd fallen in love with this particular house. The monthly payment will be tight, I'd warned them. $3,800 including taxes and insurance. Are you sure you can handle that? Absolutely, Melanie had assured me. My promotion puts us in a great position, and Derek's salary is stable. We've run all the numbers. Within 6 months, they were struggling. The first time Derek called asking for help with the mortgage payment, he'd sounded embarrassed. It's just this month, George. Melanie had some unexpected medical bills. Could you possibly cover our payment? We'll pay you back next month. The payment was $3,817. I transferred it that same day. But next month became the month after, then 3 more payments over the following year. $17,103 total. They'd repaid exactly none of it. The BMW payments were another drain. Derek's car payment was $612 monthly. Melanie's was $597. When Derek got passed over for a promotion he'd counted on, they couldn't make both payments. Just a temporary thing, Derek had promised. Until I find something with better pay. I covered their car payments for 4 months straight. $4,836. Again, no repayment. Susan's jewelry. The ring my grandmother had given her worth $12,000. Melanie had admired it so often that I'd given it to her last Christmas. Something to remember your mother by, I'd said. She'd worn it to the office every day since. The jewelry conversation haunted me now. Susan had been wearing that ring when she died, her hand in mine during those final hours. My grandmother's engagement ring, passed down through 3 generations. Susan had made me promise to give it to Melanie when the time was right. She'll treasure it, Susan had whispered. It represents our family's love. When I'd presented it to Melanie last Christmas morning, she'd gasped. Dad, this is too precious. Are you sure you want me to have it? Your mother wanted you to have it. She said it would keep our family connected even after she was gone. Melanie had cried then, genuine tears of what I'd thought was love and gratitude. I'll never take it off. Every time I look at it, I'll think of you and Mom and how lucky I am to be your daughter. She'd worn it every day since. I'd seen it glinting on her finger during our Sunday dinners, during family photos, during the office parties where she'd mingled with my colleagues. My grandmother's ring on the hand of a daughter who called me pathetic behind my back. Every Christmas bonus I'd received the past 3 years, split equally between them. For your future, I'd said, invest it wisely. $23,000, $19,000, $27,000. They'd bought a boat with the most recent one. The bonus conversations had been special to me. Each December, I'd invite them over for dinner to celebrate the year's successes. We'd sit in my dining room, and I'd present them each with a check. This year was particularly good, I'd said last December, handing them each envelopes containing checks for $13,500. The company exceeded all its targets, and my performance review was outstanding. I want to share the success with the people who matter most. Derek had opened his envelope first, his eyes widening. George, this is incredibly generous. Are you sure you can afford this? I'm sure. You're my family. Seeing you both succeed is worth more to me than any investment account balance. Melanie had hugged me tightly. Dad, you're too good to us. We're so grateful for everything you do. 2 weeks later, they'd bought a $28,000 boat. When I'd seen it in their driveway, Derek had grinned sheepishly. We figured we deserved a little fun, he'd said. Life's short, right? Besides, we can make family memories on the lake. They'd never invited me out on that boat. Not once in 8 months of owning it. But the deepest cut was remembering Susan's final illness. The medical bills that had drained our savings. The experimental treatments not covered by insurance. I'd liquidated my retirement accounts early, paying penalty fees that totaled $18,700, just to keep her comfortable in her final months. When Susan died, Derek and Melanie had been there for the funeral, looking appropriately sad. But within a month, they were asking for money again. "We want to do something special to honor Mom's memory," Melanie had said. "Maybe we could take a trip to that place in Italy she always talked about visiting. Just the three of us to celebrate her life." I'd paid for the entire trip. $11,463 for flights, hotels, meals, tours. We'd spend a week in Tuscany, visiting the vineyards Susan had dreamed of seeing. Or so I'd thought at the time. Looking back now, I wondered if they'd ever thought about Susan at all during that trip, or if they'd just seen it as a free vacation funded by the grieving widower. I opened my laptop and began searching through our company database. Derek's employee file appeared on screen. His resume, the one I'd helped him craft, the one I'd vouched for with HR. As I read through it, patterns emerged that I'd been too trusting to notice before. Project leadership on the Morrison account. Derek had been a junior team member, not a leader. I knew this because I'd spoken directly with his supervisor about the project. Yet here it was listed as one of his major accomplishments. Certification in Advanced Database Management, a program he'd mentioned attending but never showed me completion documents for. I made a note to verify this. Melanie's file was next. Similar discrepancies jumped out. Claims about leading cross-functional teams when I knew she'd been part of teams, not leading them. Revenue figures that seemed inflated compared to what I'd heard about her actual projects. My phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Thanks again for lunch yesterday, Dad. You're the best. Love you." The irony felt like swallowing ground glass. I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched for our company's conflict of interest policies. There it was, clear as daylight. Employees related by marriage or blood could not work within the same division without explicit disclosure and approval from the ethics committee. Derek and Melanie had been in my division for 2 years. The next morning, I walked into the office with a different energy. My assistant commented on it. "You seem very focused today, Mr. Peterson." "I am," I replied. "Very focused indeed." I scheduled a meeting with Janet Williams, our head of compliance. Janet had worked with me for 12 years. We'd hired her together. Actually, I'd recommended her for the position. "George, good to see you. What can I help you with?" "I need to discuss some potential policy violations I've discovered. Nothing urgent, but I want to make sure we handle everything by the book." Janet leaned forward, suddenly serious. "What kind of violations?" "Possible resume discrepancies and conflict of interest issues. I'd like to conduct a comprehensive review of all employees in my division. Standard procedure, completely routine. But I want everything documented properly." "Of course. When would you like to start?" "Today, if possible. I'll provide you with a list of priorities." Derek's name was at the top of that list. Melanie's was second. That afternoon, I called Patricia at DataVault. "Patricia, I need a favor. Could you verify some information about Melanie's work on the Henderson project? I'm updating our internal records." Patricia's tone changed slightly. "George, I have to be honest with you. Melanie's performance on Henderson wasn't what we'd hoped for. She missed several key deadlines and had to be reassigned to a support role halfway through. I didn't want to bring it up because she's your daughter, but the project actually came in over budget and behind schedule." My pen clicked against my notepad. "I see. And the revenue impact," she claimed. "Revenue impact?" "George, the Henderson project broke even at best. Certainly no significant revenue generation. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Just routine verification. Thanks for being honest with me." I made similar calls about Derek. His former supervisor at TechFlow was equally enlightening. "Derek? Nice guy, but definitely not leadership material. He was adequate as a team member, but we never put him in charge of major projects." "Where did you hear otherwise?" The documentation began piling up. False claims, inflated accomplishments, exaggerated responsibilities. Every conversation revealed another layer of deception. That evening, Derek called me at home. "Hey George, want to grab a beer? Haven't seen you much lately." "Actually, Derek, I'm pretty busy these days." "Rain check." "Sure, no problem. Everything okay?" "You sound different." "Just work stuff. You know how it is." I hung up and continued my research. By midnight, I had comprehensive files on both of them. The picture that emerged was clear. They'd been systematically lying about their qualifications and achievements, using my reputation to cover their inadequacies. The next day, I visited Marcus Rodriguez, the employment attorney our company used for sensitive matters. Marcus had handled several complex cases for us over the years. "George, good to see you. What brings you here?" I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "I need advice about employee misconduct. Hypothetically, what happens when someone provides false information on their resume and violates conflict of interest policies?" Marcus leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Well, false resume information is grounds for immediate termination. Conflict of interest violations depend on the severity, but they can range from written warnings to termination and potential legal action. Are we talking about a specific situation? Possibly. If I were to discover such violations, what would be the proper procedure? Document everything meticulously. Present the evidence to HR and compliance. Let the process work as designed. The company has zero tolerance for resume fraud. It's considered a form of theft by deception." I leaned forward. "Theft by deception. Can you elaborate on that?" "Certainly. When someone obtains employment or advancement through false credentials, they're essentially stealing wages they wouldn't have earned otherwise. In Texas, if the amount exceeds $2,500 in wages over a 12-month period, it becomes a felony." I did quick math in my head. Derek's salary increase from his inflated qualifications, Melanie's project management position based on exaggerated experience. We were well into felony territory. And the statute of limitations? 5 years for employment fraud. But George, this sounds like more than a hypothetical. Is there something specific I should know about? Not yet. But if there were such a situation, would the company have any obligation to report it to law enforcement? Marcus considered carefully. Technically no, unless it involved federal contracts or regulated industries. But companies often do report significant fraud to establish a paper trail and protect themselves from future liability. I walked back to the office with Marcus's words echoing in my mind. Theft by deception. Felony fraud. 5-year statute of limitations. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Patricia at DataVault. "George, I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to give you a heads up about Melanie's performance evaluation. It's not great." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. "What kind of problems?" "Missed deadlines, budget overruns, team conflicts. The Henderson project I mentioned earlier was just the tip of the iceberg. She's been reassigned to 3 different teams in the past year because of performance issues. I had no idea. I didn't want to burden you with it, but honestly, if she weren't your daughter, we would have let her go months ago. We've been carrying her out of respect for our relationship." Another knife twist. Even Patricia's company had been propping up Melanie as a favor to me. "Patricia, I need you to document everything. Performance issues, missed deadlines, budget impacts. Everything." Her tone changed. "George, what's going on? Just do it, please. And Patricia? From now on, treat Melanie exactly like any other employee. No special considerations because she's related to me." "Are you sure about that?" "Absolutely certain." Friday afternoon, I received the final verification I needed. Derek's database management certification, the prestigious one he'd listed on his resume, didn't exist. The training company had no record of him completing their program. But I'd discovered more than that. His claimed experience with advanced SQL databases was fabricated. His supposed leadership of the Morrison account was false. He'd been a junior team member, not a project leader. Even his college GPA was inflated by 0.3 of a point. Melanie's resume was equally fiction-heavy. Her claimed revenue generation figures were pure fantasy. Her leadership experience was non-existent. She'd even lied about her college internship, claiming to have managed a team when she'd actually been a filing clerk. The pattern was clear. They'd both built their careers on systematic deception, using my reputation as collateral for their lies. Saturday morning, I began drafting my comprehensive report. Every false claim, Every inflated achievement, every policy violation laid out in chronological order with supporting documentation. But I didn't stop there. I researched every company in Austin where Derek might seek employment. Reached out to HR directors I'd worked with over the years. Professional courtesy calls, I explained. Just wanted to share some concerns about potential applicants with questionable backgrounds. George, I appreciate you looking out for us, said Amanda Foster at TechStream. We'll definitely flag Derek Peterson's application if we see it. Similar conversations with directors at DataTech, SystemWorks, CloudVault, and 8 other firms. By Sunday evening, Derek's employment prospects in Austin had effectively vanished. For Melanie, I took a different approach. She'd keep her job, but her career advancement was finished. I made discreet calls to project managers across the industry, sharing concerns about her performance and reliability. The email to Janet Williams was scheduled to send Monday morning at 8 a.m., copying our CEO, legal department, and board of directors. Sunday dinner was the final test of my resolve. Derek and Melanie arrived at my house with flowers and wine, the same cheerful energy they always brought. Melanie wore my grandmother's ring as always. Derek had a new haircut and was talking excitedly about his future prospects. George, I can't thank you enough for all the advice you've given me over the years, Derek said, raising his wine glass. You've been like a father to me. More than a father-in-law, a real mentor. Family takes care of family, I replied, watching his face carefully. No hint of shame or guilt. No recognition of the cruelty I'd overheard. Melanie beamed at me from across the table. Dad, you've sacrificed so much for us. When Derek gets that VP position, we want to start paying you back for everything. Maybe we can finally take that European vacation you've been talking about. That's very thoughtful, I said. But you don't owe me anything. Seeing you both succeed is payment enough. The lies came so easily to them. They'd been practicing for 8 years. Actually, George, Derek said, leaning forward conspiratorially, I heard through the grapevine that TechFlow might have a VP opening soon. Any chance you could put in a word? I think I'm really ready for that level of responsibility. I met his eyes directly. Of course, I'd be happy to recommend you for any position you're qualified for. The emphasis on qualified sailed right past him. You're so generous with your connections, Dad, Melanie said. We're so lucky to have you in our lives. After they left, I walked through my house, looking at the family photos lining the hallway. Susan and me on our wedding day. Melanie's graduation from college. Derek and Melanie's engagement party in my backyard. Happy memories that now felt contaminated by knowledge. I poured myself a glass of Susan's favorite wine, a 1997 Barolo we'd been saving for a special occasion that never came, and sat in my study. Her picture smiled at me from the bookshelf. I tried to take care of our girl, I whispered to her image. But she turned out to be someone we never knew. Someone who uses your ring as a prop in her manipulation games. Someone who laughs at your memory when she thinks no one can hear. The weight of 8 years of deception settled on my shoulders like a heavy coat. 8 years of believing their gratitude was genuine. 8 years of thinking I was building something meaningful with the family I had left. 8 years of being the fool in their private joke. Monday morning at 8 a.m., my comprehensive report landed in 6 different inboxes simultaneously. By 8:15, Janet Williams was calling my office. George, we need to meet immediately. Conference Room B. By 9 a.m., Derek and Melanie were both being escorted to HR for individual meetings. By 10 a.m., building security was cleaning out Derek's desk while he sat in a legal conference room reviewing termination paperwork. Melanie's meeting lasted longer. Her violations were more complex. The false resume information combined with the conflict of interest issues created a web of policy violations. Eventually, the decision was made to demote her to a junior coordinator position with a salary reduction to $52,000. Derek was terminated immediately. His final paycheck would be reduced by the amount of unearned bonuses he'd received based on false accomplishments. The company would not provide references for future employment. I wasn't present for either meeting, but Janet briefed me afterward. Derek became quite agitated, she said. made some threats about suing the company. Our legal team informed him that we'd be happy to discuss his resume fraud in court if he preferred that route. And Melanie? She asked to speak with you directly. I told her that wasn't possible given the conflict of interest situation. She seemed shocked that you were the one who discovered the violations. That evening, my phone rang constantly. Derek first screaming about betrayal and lawsuits, then Melanie crying and begging me to fix this somehow. Then Derek again, trying a different approach, apologizing and claiming he could explain everything. I answered none of the calls. The next morning brought a knock at my door. Derek and Melanie stood on my porch, both looking like they hadn't slept. "George, please," Derek started. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "Everything is quite clear." Melanie stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please. I know we made mistakes, but we're family. We can work through this." "Family?" I repeated the words slowly. "Yes, let's talk about family. In particular, let's discuss your conversation in the conference room last Tuesday. About what a pathetic loser I am. About how you were just using me." The color drained from both their faces. "You don't understand the context," Derek stammered. "We were just blowing off steam. Everyone complains about their in-laws sometimes. Blowing off steam about getting rid of the old fool once you didn't need his connections anymore? About pushing me into early retirement? About how embarrassing it is to be related to someone so pathetic." Melanie sobbed harder. "We didn't mean it. We were angry about something else and took it out on you. Please, Dad. I love you. You know I love you." "Love," I said. "The way you loved spending my money? The way you loved wearing your mother's ring while laughing about my stupidity? The way you loved having me co-sign your mortgage while planning my removal? We'll pay you back," Derek said desperately. "Every penny. We'll make this right." "With what money?" "Derek, you're unemployed and unemployable. I made sure of that. Melanie, you're making $52,000 now. Barely enough to cover your BMW payment." They stared at me in shock. "You see, I didn't just document your policy violations for our company. I shared my findings with colleagues at every major firm in Austin. Professional courtesy, you understand. HR departments talk to each other. Your reputations in this city are finished." Derek's desperation turned to rage. "You vindictive old bastard. We apologized. Isn't that enough?" "Apologized? When? I heard you laugh about what a fool I was. I heard you plan my professional destruction. I heard my own daughter, call me pathetic and embarrassing. Which part of that sounds like an apology to you?" "We were wrong," Melanie pleaded. "But destroying our lives won't fix anything. What would Mom think about this?" The mention of Susan hit like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. "Your mother would think that actions have consequences. She would think that people who lie and manipulate and bite the hand that feeds them eventually face justice." I started to close the door. "Wait," Derek shouted. "What about mercy? What about second chances?" I paused and looked at him one final time. "Second chances are for people who make mistakes. What you did was deliberate, calculated. 8 years of using me while mocking me behind my back. 8 years of taking my money, my connections, my love, and laughing about how stupid I was to give them freely. So what now?" Melanie asked quietly. "Now you learn to live with your choices. Find jobs that match your actual qualifications. Support yourselves without my connections. Build lives based on truth instead of deception." I closed the door and listened to them argue on my porch for another 10 minutes before finally driving away. 6 months later, I ran into Patricia at a coffee shop downtown. "George, good to see you. How are you handling everything with Melanie?" "I'm doing well," I replied honestly, "focusing on my work and moving forward. I heard Derek is working at a call center in Round Rock, $12 an hour, and Melanie took a job at a small nonprofit. The gossip mill says they had to sell their house." "I wouldn't know," I said. "We don't speak anymore." Patricia studied my face carefully. I always wondered about some of the glowing recommendations you gave over the years. Made more sense after I learned about the family connections. Everyone deserves a chance to succeed, I said, but they have to earn it honestly. 3 weeks later, I received a promotion to Senior Vice President of Human Resources. The position Derek had been so confident he'd eventually claim. My new salary was $147,000, more than Derek and Melanie had been making combined. During my first week in the new role, I implemented a company-wide policy requiring all employees to re-verify their educational credentials and professional certifications. We discovered 4 other cases of resume fraud and handled them with the same methodical thoroughness I'd used with Derek and Melanie. The CEO praised my initiative. "George, your attention to detail and commitment to corporate integrity is exactly what this company needs. We're lucky to have you." Last month, I started dating again. Margaret is a wonderful woman I met through a hiking group. She's a retired teacher, honest and kind, with no interest in my professional connections or financial resources. When I told her about Derek and Melanie's betrayal, she simply nodded and said, "Some people confuse kindness with weakness. They always learn eventually that they're different things entirely." Yesterday, I received a letter from Melanie. She's working for a small environmental nonprofit now, making $38,000 a year. Derek found steady work at a tech support company for $15 an hour. They're renting a small apartment in Pflugerville and taking the bus to work since they lost both BMWs. The letter was full of apologies and promises to do better. She wants to rebuild our relationship, she says. She's learned her lesson and deeply regrets her mistakes. She misses having a father. I read the letter twice, then filed it away without responding. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. Some people only appreciate what they had after they've lost it forever. I built them up for 8 years, and they spent those same 8 years planning my destruction. The only difference is that I was better at execution than they were at deception. Professional methods, professional results. Justice served with the same precision I'd once used to build their careers. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below.